Welcome back into Sports Blitz Live. Luke Robinson. Going solo for just a minute here as I'm going to invite my guest, Mr. Jimmy Stein, my cohort on Talking Tuscaloosa, the podcast we do kind of weekly. Weekly for sure in the football season, and in the summer, maybe every other week. And then, of course, one of the writers for Crimson Country Club as well, and really just internet legend. Jimmy, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty good.
Has anybody ever called you an internet legend before?
Just you.
Well, if I keep saying it enough, maybe it'll stick. Let's talk a little Alabama right now. As first of all, Mack Wilson, the five-star linebacker from Carver Montgomery, he has a knee surgery issue. He may or may not be ready for the season, may not play at all. What do you think about him and his prospects for 2016?
Yeah, that's 2 injuries now for Mack postseason. He had I think a shoulder injury before, and now the knee. So I think at this point, nothing's ever in writing. You never know how these kids are going to bounce back as far as their rehab goes. But gosh, with 2 surgeries after the season, a lot to learn. When you're not healthy, you can't be out there learning with the other guys. And I think it's not in stone, but I think it's fair at this point to guess that Mack is very likely to redshirt, and that's fine. Alabama's depth at linebacker is pretty good. He probably wasn't a guy they really needed to be a first or second team player anyway.
Cooper Bateman was at the Manning Passing Academy. How do you think he did there?
I've read various reports from guys. I think the most famous report so far, the one that's gotten the most attention from Alabama fans, has been that Phil Savage, who's one heck of an evaluator, he's been evaluating talent most of his professional career. He was there and said he was impressed with Cooper on the short and intermediate throws, but that his deep throws weren't very impressive. That really shouldn't surprise any Alabama fan that's seen Cooper play quite a bit. I wouldn't say what Phil Savage said was surprising in any way. I would just say in sort of defense of Cooper, or the idea that Cooper could still win this job, is that Greg McElroy didn't have the biggest arm either. He wasn't exactly launching 80-yard balls to Julio in 2009 and 2010 all the time, and we won quite a few games with Greg. So, it definitely is not something that's an asset in Cooper's arsenal, and something he's got to work on, something he's got to get, bigger, stronger, better technique, better timing, because timing is an important thing on deep balls. But it's something Cooper has to overcome. But as of today, as of right now, if we're playing a game this weekend, Coach Saban's been pretty clear that Cooper would be the starting quarterback.
Recruiting, always a hot topic, even though it's a dead period right now. Alabama lost out on Wyatt Davis, an offensive lineman from California, commits to Ohio State, and to Aubrey Solomon, who commits to Michigan, even though a lot of people think that race isn't over, a defensive lineman out of Georgia.
Yeah, each year there are more and more decommitments and flipping around, and there's more flip-flopping than catching fish, really. I mean, it's crazy. And I think it's because the recruiting calendar has changed so much over the years, Luke, that kids are sort of pressured to commit earlier than ever, and those super early commitments is what leads to later decommitments. So you never know for sure, but I don't think either one of those 2 guys were likely to end up at Alabama, period. So, I think we can just assume those guys are either sticking with where they're committed, or if they do flip, it's unlikely it would be to Alabama. That doesn't really affect the Tide too much, Luke. It's sitting right now at 15 commitments. In my opinion, this is the best first 15 commitments Alabama has landed in the Saban era, with players like Najee Harris, Tua Tagovailoa, as well as Tyrell Shavers. It's a fantastic early start to this group for sure.
One kid in this class that I'm really beginning to fall in love with, and that's Mac Jones, the quarterback from Bowles School, who was committed to Kentucky. He seems okay with the fact that Alabama's got Tua T coming in from Hawaii. He has no problem with it. He's totally okay with the fact that the roster is stacked with 4- and 5-star kids already, and he just is embracing his newfound stardom as an Alabama commit. He talked about it in an article with SEC Country today about how much different it's been being a Kentucky commit versus an Alabama commit. And one other side note you may not know, he can speak fluent Chinese.
Get out.
Get out. I'm not getting out.
Well, don't get out now. You're hosting a show.
I'm in the middle of an interview. I'm not getting out. But yeah, he can. He just comes from a multi-talented family. And just an interesting tidbit. I bet you, how many former quarterbacks, current or former quarterbacks at Alabama, do you think could speak Chinese?
I'm just positive that answer is 0. Although McElroy could probably learn it in about a week.
No, I think Kenny Stabler may have sometimes, but I'm not sure it was fluent.
It's frankly a great audible system. So Bateman can come up to the line of scrimmage and holler out some Mandarin out to his wide receivers, and I assure you the corners aren't going to know what they're talking about. So maybe maybe it meant. So Mac Jones speaks Chinese.
That's according to the article I read, and you know nothing's ever wrong on the internet.
You're educating the listeners.
I'm trying my best. I don't know if you're following this AL.com top 100 players from the state of Alabama list, but it's essentially top 100 players that have ever played anywhere in the state of Alabama, whether it be high school or just from the state or played college there, etc. And at the number 100 spot, they unbelievably had David Palmer, which to me invalidates the list. Your thoughts?
Well, when I read something like that and I hear something like that, I'll be completely honest, even though those folks at AL.com do awesome work and those guys are really talented. I love lists like that, but when I look over a list and I see a David Palmer at number 100, I can't read the rest of the list.
That's right.
I can't read it. I'm like, whoa, I'm not reading this. That's insane. I mean, I would tell anyone, and I've been consistent on this going back to the early 90s, in my lifetime of watching Alabama football, even with our 2 Heisman Trophy winners in Mark Ingram and Derrick Henry, I think David Palmer is the most gifted athlete I've ever seen play offense at Alabama. And that includes Derrick and Mark and Julio and anyone in the state there. Palmer's number 1 in my lifetime, so yeah, he's number 100 on that list. That just means that I'm not reading the rest of the list.
Jimmy, I'm right there with you. As I told Randy, my co-host tonight earlier, he caught 60 passes in a Gene Stalling offense, which is essentially catching 120 passes in any other offense. But, Jimmy, thanks so much for being with us tonight, bud. We'll have you on again soon. Let's do a podcast sometime.
We'll do one next week. Thanks, Luke.
All right, buddy. We'll talk to you later. That was Jimmy Stein, my co-host for Talking Tuscaloosa, and also a writer for CrimsonCountryClub.com. We'll be back in just a minute with more Sports Blitz Live.